Hello and welcome to Leadership and Strategic Management. I am Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me today. This is the live stream I do once a week or thereabouts on business and higher level business type issues and topics. And the title of this episode number 32, is called How to Get Hired in Leadership Roles. This is something we've actually talked about before, but we're going to talk about it again because I know that there are people out there who are wondering this. If you are on a certain career track and you've been maybe a worker for many, many years, you've maybe even been a lead hand or anyone like that, kind of a jumped up worker, but you are ambitious to further your career to move upwards into management. This is what we're going to talking about that. And specifically, these are management roles where you are managing people, right? Because it is possible to get management roles where you're managing other things, assets, money, projects, right? Things like that. But this specifically people management. That's why we're talking about leadership, because leadership is certainly an aspect of that. Okay. And hello to people in the chat. So yes, so the structure is we're going to talk about this and then I'm going to open it up to questions because this is, after all, a Q&A. So if your lifelong ambition was to ask me a question, then this is your apotheosis, really, your moment of glory. So I'm just going to go into a spiel. We're going to talk about this, and then we'll take questions in a bit. But first, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members and Patreons. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And also to my super thanks donors. Those are always really nice to get. So thank you very much. And also to my viewers and participants, and that means you. So if you're here, thank you for being here. Hopefully we can learn and cover some ground together. Okay, so in the past, I talked about this topic. I did it kind of off the top of my head, this sort of thing. Today, I wanted to try something a little bit different with the same topic. And just so that you know that I'm not making this stuff up off the top of my head, I figured I would do the thing where I ask the question to ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT would give an answer, and then I'm going to go through the answer and critique it, because ChatGPT and those kind of chatbots, they're useful. They know a lot, but they don't know everything, and their answers aren't always perfect. So let's dive in. Okay, if I can figure out my own technology, here we go. Okay, so I asked this question like a couple of minutes ago. Okay, so what are the common ways to get hired in leadership roles? And by leadership roles, I mean management positions, specifically management positions that require people management because you are leading teams, presumably. And this is what it said. Okay, getting hired into people management roles, like a team lead or manager or director, usually follows a few well-established paths. Yes, it does. What matters most isn't just technical skill. Yes, it's evidence that you can lead people, make decisions, and deliver through others. I just want to say, before we even get into this too deep, that is actually much less of a thing than a lot of people will admit to. Because if you go back to, I don't know, World War II and any time before World War II, the earliest 20th century, there are countless examples of workers moving up into managerial roles all the time and doing a half-decent job of leading people. It's not some secret sauce that there's only one person in 1,000 that can do this. Most people can, especially when you are a little bit older and, it's more of a natural role to teach people and to, because you yourself know what to do. It's easy to know what's to be done and to direct others who are maybe less experienced than you. So it's a very natural thing. It's not some very tall order all of a sudden, but that's not the impression that you would get when you're dealing with HR. And those jobs are very competitive, so they can afford to be very nitpicky about it. Okay, so here we go. Here are the most common and realistic ways people land these roles. So number one, internal promotion. Yep, absolutely correct. This is the most common path. This is by far the number one way people become managers. Yes, that is true. How it works. You perform well as an individual contributor. So what that means is that you're essentially a worker, and they get to know you. They see your value. They see that you're a person that other people would want to work for. They see your natural ability to, or learned ability to direct others, and how other people like you and want to work with you. So that plus being technically competent, it's a no-brainer, right? They can see that. So they know who you are and they trust you. That's key. You start mentoring others, leading small initiatives. Yeah, that really helps. Sometimes managers will deliberately give you those types of tasks so that you can show that you're good at it. Leadership informally tests you by delegating management tasks, conflict handling, or ownership. Now, these are things that managers do. Okay, if you're in charge of something, you own a piece of a company or business unit, or the entire business unit. You're going to be doing this kind of stuff. So people management obviously involves things like conflict resolution. You get promoted into a formal management role. Yeah, so anyway, the way this works is that if you have the technical chops, that's good. But in order to lead people effectively, you need to tack on a few different things. Number one is knowledge of people and communication skills. Everybody, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, everybody is pretty good at communicating and interoperating with people who are just like you. That doesn't really take a lot of talent to communicate well and to work well with people who are exactly like you, right? Same personality, same background, same way of communicating, way of working, right? That's not really a challenge. Where the challenge is communicating and interoperating with people who are really not like you. That's the challenge, right? So if you are an engineer, being able to work well with a salesperson, or, two people that are kind of polar opposites, maybe, someone who's an archivist, working very, very well with someone, who is in marketing or something like that. You know what I mean? So that's the challenge, right? Different personalities, different communication styles, different backgrounds. That's what takes the soft skills, right? So that's what they're looking for, because when you are running teams, the odds are that you're going to get different types of people on those teams. They're not all going to be exactly like you. Most of them will be different than you. So you still need to be able to communicate well with them, understand them, see eye to eye with them, and be able to, speak with them, get through to them, this kind of thing, right? So that's the idea. Okay, so if they've seen evidence of that, right, then this is like presumably your boss. That's if you're in this role and your boss is, the person observing you. If they see you doing well at this kind of stuff, then they may think, this person is a candidate to either be my successor or to move into a position similar to mine, right? That's the idea. Okay. And then the idea is that, they could recommend you, right? So if they're moving on or they're getting a promotion or something, they have some say sometimes in who replaces them, so they can make recommendations and say, well, this person is the outstanding person on my team, and I have cross-trained them for a lot of the stuff I do. I rely on them when I'm on vacation or whatever. So they're the obvious choice to take over from me, right? Things like that. Okay, why companies prefer doing this? The internal promotion thing. Lower risk, they already know you. Yeah, that's a big thing. You understand company culture and systems. Yeah. Easier transition. Yeah. How to position yourself. Ask to lead projects or initiatives. So if you want to move up, you want to be seen as somebody that is a candidate to move upwards, and you want to go up internally, you can certainly ask for this. Sometimes it's not a formal thing. Sometimes it's just kind of, showing that you can do the soft skills part. You're capable of doing it. And more than that, you're interested in doing it. Volunteer for cross-team coordination, whatever that means. Like cross training, things like that. Show you can influence without authority. Okay, that means you get people to behave in a certain way, but without ordering them to, because you're their superior on the organizational chart. Usually, you don't want to have to resort to that all the time. Okay, key signal. People already act like you're the leader before you get the title. Yeah. That can come from being the technical authority in whatever area. You're the senior person, that's the obvious person. Now, if you can tack on things like communication skills, people management skills, other relevant management-related skills, then that seals the deal. Okay, number 2. This is, God, excuse me. Jeez, that kind of crept up on me. External hire based on prior management experience. So this is when you move into a people management type role, but they're hiring you externally. Okay, this is the most straightforward external route. How it works: you already manage people elsewhere. Yeah, you apply for a similar, slightly bigger role. Now, in my experience, my experience is in a smaller city. I live in a smaller city, and that's where I've worked most of my life. This is not the case in larger cities. Larger cities, people don't tend to know each other as much, and things like this. They're more open to taking a chance on someone they don't know. In smaller places, the general trend is that it's a bit more of a tight-knit kind of little world there, and it may not be enough that you've already technically managed people. They might want the equivalent of this. They're looking for that. So if they can find someone that, for example, you've worked in a business or at an employer that they're familiar with, they can verify you. Maybe they know of you. Maybe they know their counterpart at that company. And if you say you worked under that person that they recognize and they know, then that's a source of instant credibility. But if you work at an employer that they've never heard of, they don't know of you, then it's a more of an uphill battle, right? Okay, how it works: you apply for a similar or slightly bigger role. It is possible to do job hopping. That's kind of, I don't know if you technically call it job hopping, but you go like this. You start here, and then you do that, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, right? It's like you're getting a promotion by going to a different employer. So you're going one level up, and then instead of going up internally here, you jump to another employer and go up a level. I've done that a little bit. So that is a possibility. It depends on the industry, though. It may not always be possible. Okay, so the external hire for a manager role, what companies look for? Team size managed. Yes. Basically, there's 2 metrics for these things. One is the size of the team that you managed. The other one is the dollar value of the operation you were in charge of. Okay, so that's the idea. Like size of your budget if you're on the cost side, or the size of your revenue on the revenue side. Okay. This is pretty important. Hiring, firing experience. Okay, so unfortunately that's a part of it. Not that this is like radically hard or anything, it's just they're looking for people with experience doing it, so they avoid rookie mistakes. That's naturally what they want to do. Performance management, reviews, coaching, that kind of thing. And yes, there's a lot of experience-related stuff here too. Okay, business impact, not just managed a team. That really depends. It really depends on what your role is and what the role is you're going to, right? Some people don't have to worry about this. Like, especially if you're on the cost side, you make a couple of cost savings, okay. But you might know nothing about the revenue side, and that's what's sort of capping your career from moving up into a general manager role, because you need to know the profit side, and you might not have any relevant experience there. What strengths What strengthens your candidacy? Clear metrics, growth, retention, output. Yeah. Examples of handling conflict or underperformance. Yes, you kind of need that. You should be able to give these things. You should be able to give these things on command, or give it, as the case may be. Evidence of building teams, not just inheriting them. Yes, even though inheriting them is a hell of a lot harder. That's the irony. It's easy to build a team. I picked that one. Right? You know what I mean? Inheriting them, that's where you didn't pick them. You might not have picked them, right? If you had the chance, but you're stuck with them. Now, can you work together? That's a far tougher challenge. Okay, number 3. I'm only going to do, I think there's maybe 5 of these that are worth talking about. Number 3, transition from a senior IC. So that stands for, in command. So senior in command. So this is like a second in command type thing, to a first-time manager. Yeah, this is like more of the same, really. I'm not going to go through everything here, but it's basically you're moving up internally, right? You're being, like, say you were the assistant manager or a lead hand or something like that. You're the head worker, whatever the title is, or the assistant to the manager. Now you're moving into the manager role. That's one purpose of those assistant manager roles, is not only kind of redundancy and failover, someone else can relieve the manager when the manager's not there, like on vacation or something, but, or the manager quits. You have somebody that can immediately take over from them. But you're sort of like grooming somebody for that role, right? That's the idea. Okay, leading high impact projects, stepping stone strategy. Yes, now we're getting into some of the more exotic stuff. Sometimes we see this, not all the time, because projects, depending on what you mean by projects, can be directly relevant to people management, or they may not be, right? It is possible to be a project manager and not supervise anybody, right? Or you have some weird matrix management thing going on where, you don't technically supervise all these people, but, you are allowed to give them work instructions for the purposes of working on your project or something, So, yeah. And then I think this is the last I'm going to do. Switching companies for a bigger role, the title jump. This is what I was alluding to earlier. Sometimes people get their first or their next management role by moving companies. Yes, I've done that. How it works. You're near ready internally, but not promoted yet. Yeah, see, I did this because where I was working, there was seniority. They had a seniority system. And what that meant was, it meant something stupid. It meant that, like, in order for me to move one level up, I'd have to wait 25 years or something ridiculous like that. I have to wait for my boss to retire or, screw up and be fired or something like that. It's like, no, I'm not counting on that. So I decided, no, I'm going to go sideways. And it is possible when you're in an industry where if you go to another employer, they know of your current employer, and they hold them in high regard, and they might even know their counterparts at, other companies and stuff. They go, you're working for that guy? Okay, I know they're good. Oh, you've worked for them for like 5 years? Okay, then, I know them. I think they're good. Therefore, you must be good too. And that's how you can get sort of instant credibility. Sometimes you're that isn't the case. You're not working in a big company. You're working in an unknown company. It doesn't have that kind of pull. You know what I'm saying? So you don't ever have that credibility with these people when you're trying to communicate to them that, you can do the job. So switching companies. So sometimes people get their first or next management role by moving companies. How it works, you're near ready internally but not promoted yet. Another company is willing to take the bet. When this works best, you already show strong leadership behaviors. You interview well on people scenarios. That's important, because this doesn't matter worth a jot, because they can't see that, right? You can talk to them about it, but they don't see any evidence of that themselves. That's the problem. The company is growing fast. Yes. That is a good opportunity. Now, there's something that I've talked about, certainly in my course, but I think I have mentioned it on my YouTube channel at some point. But the term I use for it is growth opportunities. That's where it is possible to find out what employers are coming to town in the place you live and what employers are expanding, like what companies are growing, if there's any local success stories. It is possible to find that out. They have government departments that deal with that kind of thing, like Department of, the Economic Growth Office or whatever. It'll be called different things in different countries, but basically every big city has one. And their job is to try and encourage employers to come into that town and set up shop so that, creates jobs and stimulates the economy and all that. So it is possible to find out from them, like, who's coming to town. And so if you know that, like, okay, this company is in the process of coming into town, they're not here yet, they're not operating yet, you can reach out to them and say, like, hey, I understand that you're setting up shop here. I'm from there. I think your company's fantastic. If you're looking for someone that is going to be the point person for you in this new location, you let me know because I'd very much like to work with you. And now if they're setting up some kind of branch office or whatever, they're going to be looking for, managers and employees and all this kind of stuff. So you sort of get in early and they're like, hey, that's cool. If you can do some groundwork for us, sure, this sort of thing. So there's always that possibility. Okay, when this works best. Okay, I think we talked about this. You already showed, yeah. Risk, less support versus internal promotion. Yeah. Higher expectations from day one. Well, I don't know, possibly. Key signal, you're just one opportunity away from being recognized as a manager. Yes, possibly. The thing is, it's about finding the right opportunities. Sometimes just the situation just lines up where they regard you well. They know of your experience, they respect your experience, and it clicks. Other times, it's like you're swimming uphill, upstream, whatever you want to call it. You're running upstream or swimming uphill, trying to do this. So it really depends on the situation. Sometimes there are opportunities, everything clicks. Here were the other ones. I'll just show them what they are, but I won't read them. Startups and small companies, yes, possibly. If it's like a high-profile startup, certainly. Building leadership credibility, indirect path. Some people move into management by building authority outside formal roles. Yeah, possibly, I guess. What actually gets you hired? Well, having been in a role gets you hired. That's the instant sign that you could do it. The question is, are they familiar with that role, and do they believe that it's relevant? That's the big question. So, if you're in a role that they've heard of, great. If you're not, it might take a bit more song and dance to try and convince them. But basically, they're looking for these things. These aren't super hard in themselves. People skills, I wouldn't put coaching number one, but basically the ability to make a plan and the ability to keep that plan on track, and then doing everything you need to do in between, which is organizing, planning schedules and resources and things, and then influencing, like doing the people side of it, giving instructions, working with people to make sure they understand, working through some of the things that might have fallen through the cracks, motivating people, all that kind of stuff. Okay, I don't feel like reading this. I'll just read the header. So ownership and decision making, yes. Delivering through others. I mean, this means like technical skills, basically. And to a lesser extent, knowledge of people. You've worked with people before. You know what the right thing is to do to handle certain situations, right? That's what that means in this context. Ownership means that, like, if it's the thing about management is that you're given an operation and it's yours and you are tied to it. And if it fails, then you're out the door. If it succeeds, then it's a credit to you. That's the idea. That's what ownership means. You know, you can't just have the worker attitude and be a manager where you're like, oh, not my job. I'm only here from this time to this. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to do whatever it takes to make this thing work. And if you can't, then it's a reflection on you. That's the expectation anyway. Okay, so that's the meat and potato of it. What people miss. A management role is not a reward for being great at your job. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a totally different thing. It's a different job. Yeah, it says right there. It's a different job entirely. Less doing, more coordinating, less control, more influence. Success equals team success, not personal output. Generally speaking, instead of you doing the work, you're coordinating others doing the work. That's the idea. Okay? And you are responsible that the work gets done. Okay, so anyway, that's, what did it say? I guess I can map out the fast realistic path for you specifically. Well, how would you know? This is a incognito type thing. So anyway, hopefully that was semi-interesting. Let's get over to you guys' questions. I know some people have been waiting for a little while. Okay, so the award for the first person in the chat, I'm going to move my microphone, is Priya. Priya says, hello, watching you at midnight, 12:30 a.m. I guess that would be more like 1 a.m. now. Thank you for being here. Barbosa, 1802, says, hi. Hi, Barbosa. Raul says, or is that Raul? Raul. I work as a marketing manager at a mid-market manufacturer where I've built 2 functions from scratch, but due to my lack of experience, I'm not necessarily seen as a leader. How can I overcome this? Well, you can strengthen your bond with the people that you want to communicate this to, right? You could be doing all the amazing things of the company. You could be the entire reason that company makes money. But if there's somebody else running the show and they don't know who you are, you're probably not going to be credited as such, right? So you need to stay in close proximity to the people that you want to be noticed by. That's just that simple. If you want someone to get the impression that, oh, I am good at my job and I am doing, all this stuff, then you need to have multiple contacts with that person so that they see you a lot, and that will further your goal. So that's kind of the first thing. You got to be around the people you're trying to communicate to, right? Hard to do if you're an introvert and you don't want to necessarily be hanging around them all the time. The practical reality is if you want to be seen, you want to be seen, say, by the boss, go and hang out with the boss. Go to lunch with the boss. The only way they're going to see you is if you're like right in front of them. They're not going to like go and search and find out, oh, there you are. There's no motive for that, right? Okay? They don't know what they don't know until you inform them. Right? So that's kind of the first thing. Now, a leader, like listen, this is what kind of bugs me and anybody else that's been to business school. People are throwing these terms around like leader, and they're using them totally incorrectly. They use it to mean pretty much almost anything under the sun. A leader is something very specific. It's someone who leads. That means it's someone that directs other people and forces their behavior, influences their behavior, right? So if you are in charge and you want to influence behavior, you be a leader. So for example, types of behaviors are like people showing up on time to work, people following company rules, people, maybe not having open confrontations in the work environment. These are examples of behaviors you want. So how are you going to influence that? Well, there's many ways. One way is to lead from the front. And if you want people to show up on time, you show up on time. That's like the idea. And you do it very prominently where everyone can see you. You show up ahead of time. So when they all get to work, you're always there. right? Something like that. As opposed to a boss that tells them to be in at a certain time, but they're never in at that time, right? What kind of signal is that sending? They're thinking, why should I do this? I mean, not even the boss themselves are here at that time, right? Stupid. Why would we need to do this? So, you direct people, you make it very clear, you give incentives. So incentives can range from anything to do with you give people more money, or you say something, hey, way to go. I noticed you came in early today. Wow, that's really awesome. Congratulations. Don't think I haven't noticed that. It's like, thanks for your help. How often do you get your boss coming up to you and saying, hey, thanks for your help. Great job. How would you feel if you got that? You'd probably feel pretty good. You'd say, hey, thank you. It's my pleasure, right? Most people would feel something like that, right? But if you do the work, you come in early, you don't get a thimble full of recognition or thanks, and you feel like the boss doesn't even notice you, is that going to encourage you to keep doing that? No, it's not. So, little tactics like this, basically. There's formal things and there's informal things. Right? So that's like your job as a manager a manager includes 4 things, right? Planning, organizing, influencing, and controlling. Those are the 4 things that managers do. The influencing thing, that's like where leadership is. That's where you're managing people. You're trying to make sure that they behave correctly, stamp out the incorrect behavior, stuff like that, right? So you have to do that. Okay, so what can you do you're not seen as a leader. What can you do to overcome this? Well, if there's an opportunity for you to lead and you to influence others' behavior, then presumably you would do that, and then make sure that who do you want to be seen by, and then find some way, some mechanism of them noticing that. Hopefully that helps. Priya says, I run a freelancing agency, learning a lot from this. Good. Okay, well, if you have any questions, let me know. Art Sim says, I completely bombed an interview yesterday, but I did great at the interview today. The difference was they gave me the questions and allowed me to prep. Okay. We're talking mainly about business and leadership and stuff, so less about the whole job thing. Here, I do talk about that on other live streams. Standard says, is it ever okay either during or after an interview to ask if they will be hiring multiple candidates? Yeah, you can ask. I don't think there's anything necessarily harmful about asking that. Saying, just curious, just wondering if this is like the multiplicity of the position. Are you just hiring one candidate? Or are you looking for several people and you're hiring several people in this role? Just curious. Nothing wrong with that. G. Washington says, that could be Jerry Washington. That could be, Geraldo Washington. That's good that you keep your options open. Q, meaning question. There is a lot of competition in the job market in the USA. As you know, people from all over the world come to the USA, the greatest country on earth. I'm not going to answer your question because I'm in Canada. Sorry. Let's see. Standard says, I finished my final interview 2 weeks ago, and after 1 week of silence, I asked the recruiter for an update. They said we're talking about like job stuff. Everybody's talking about job stuff. Outcome for the interview. America First. Take off shift positions, evenings and nights that no one else wants. Is that like an answer to somebody's question, maybe? Anyway, okay. I'm sure that's fine. Let's see here. Confidocene says, I got an interview in 3 days. Should I develop skills that they want in the meantime? Well, in 3 days, it's kind of hard to develop like a whole bunch of skills. I would prepare for the interview. I would rehearse, make sure you have an idea of what the answers are that you're going to give for anything you could anticipate being asked, and then rehearse them. Rehearse them by yourself, and then rehearse them with another person. That's the best way to do it. You do a mock interview. I talk about that extensively. Develop skills they want. Okay, are we talking about Canada? Okay, just so everybody knows, if we're going to be bashing countries in the chat, I have no choice but to ban you, okay? So I'm giving you one chance to like stop with that, because I'm not going to engage on that kind of political stuff. That's not what I'm here for. So if someone's trying to pick a fight about like, patriotism or something, this is kind of the wrong place. Let's see here. What's the best way to push back when a recruiter tries to put words in your mouth? Okay, people are not they're not engaging on the topic of this live stream. But for me, it's always to stay loyal to my supervisors, managers, and treat them with respect and know they mean business. Either boss with words is law, or boss that's less of words is law and more a good and nice. Okay. A good and nice leader. I still treat them as if their words is law, and I do what I should be doing, especially in places where coworkers that have words of their own. Okay. Good for you. McLovin says, do you think communication skills like quicker thinking when talking can be learned by anyone, or just some people just not do it? I know exactly what you're talking about. I've done a lot of public speaking in my life. Technically, this is public speaking, what I'm doing now, I suppose. But yeah, I certainly had a problem with that. I think most people do, where, it's hard to like think of something original when you got a bunch of people staring you down, especially when, you're nervous. It's maybe a high stakes kind of interaction, something like that. That's natural. So you're not abnormal in any way if that's what you're feeling. The way to get good at it is to be, well, look, all I can tell you is what has sort of helped me, and that is to be comfortable. And the more experience you have, either public speaking or being in that particular type of interaction, the more confident you get, the more comfortable you feel, and that enables you to not be as nervous so that you can actually do some original thinking on the spot. So that's kind of the mechanism I would advocate for. Like, just do a lot of it. Practice makes perfect. You will get more confident, you will get less nervous, and in so doing, you'll be able to perform better. Not an easy, quick fix, unfortunately. There might be something else you can do, but I'm not aware of it. Nothing comes to mind immediately when I try and think on the spot. So that's the deal. Bobby Reynolds, I always put owner and executive director on the same boat terms of they're both are in charge. I see executive director as the owner without the full control power. Okay. Jackline says, hi to Jackline. Dr. Sid says, how can I demonstrate responsibility and ownership of a project when I clearly know and aware there are many things not in my control? Well, look at, this is probably, I'm anticipating your what's triggering this question. And there's usually two things going on. One is the actual situation you described, where the answer to that is very simple. You are only responsible or the owner of things that are within your control. How could you be responsible for something that's outside of your control? Now, that being said, it may, your control may extend further than you think. Like, for example, you might not have control over other people and what they do, but you may be in control of being able to blow the whistle on them, or something like that. Have some kind of thing that you invoke. So technically, you do have some control. It may not be the mechanism of control you want, but technically it's there, right? The other kind of thing that applies to this question or this situation is the political side of it, like the appearances, the marketing side of it, where, if somebody says, are you comfortable taking ownership of like a business operation, like a branch office or, a team or whatever, right? Now, technically, there are some things there that are not 100% within your control, right? There are boundaries and constraints of what you have control over. But what people don't want usually if you're in a job interview, for example, is they don't want you to like nitpick and say like, well, technically I'm only responsible for the things I can control. And, like that's not the answer they're looking for. They're looking for someone to say, yes, are you capable of taking ownership of this? Absolutely. Yes, some of the, some elements are outside of your control, but that's the case with everything. You know what I mean? So you're answering and you're considering this question on two different levels, right? So there's the real answer of what's actually going on. There's a second answer for the sake of appearances and for the sake of indicating your willingness to do it, right? So, you know what I'm saying? You would proceed in two different ways to tackle that on two different levels. America first is my apologies. Okay, no problem. Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to like tolerate people bashing my country where I can't engage. So I'm not gonna listen to that, and it's stupid. Countries have strengths and weaknesses. You know what I mean? So there you go. Gary says, how about getting back into leadership after a decade of working jobs? Thanks. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, the obvious question somebody's going to have is that if you're capable of doing this, why did you turn your back on it for 10 years? Because what that's signaling is that you don't want to do it, or you're not particularly good at doing it, and you'd rather do this, / you're more suited to this, right? That's the obvious thing you're working against, right? So you're going to have to overcome that. Now, how to overcome it depends on who you're dealing with. If you're in a situation where you can demonstrate all the same qualities that you would need to demonstrate to convince someone that you're a good manager or something, you know what I mean? Then you would do that. But if you're having to talk a good game, that's where it may not work, right? Like, for example, if you're going into a job interview where you got to deal with a recruiter, I'd say it's near impossible, because what they're going to think is it doesn't matter what you say. You've demonstrated what you're good at and what you want to do by virtue of the jobs you've taken for the last 10 years, right? So that's what you're up against. Now, what I would recommend, if this is your situation, you're wanting to get back into a management role, first of all, don't go to any formal job interviews. Do everything on the hidden job market. Network with other managers, directors, executives, these kind of people, the people that have the power to hire you on the spot for a management role, okay? And then you do informational interviews, or you put yourself forward for these, and they can see by talking to you, you've got what it takes, you know your stuff, you seem like you're certainly capable of doing it, by virtue of the questions you're asking and the things you're saying. They can tell after an hour, certainly, a conversation with you. And I've done this kind of stuff, so that's how people change careers, coincidentally, right? They never go through recruiters, because the first question out of the recruiter's mouth is going to be, how much experience do you have in doing this thing that we're hiring for? And you have to say, well, 0, because I'm changing careers. And then their response is going to be, well, how could you think you're possibly qualified when you have 0 experience? So no, we're going with a safer choice, someone who's done it before, right? So that vector doesn't work. You have to go through the managers themselves, where they get to know you, they at least have a conversation with you, and they can see, like, your stuff. You've dealt with managing people, you've dealt with all this stuff before, you know what you're doing. So that's when they might say, okay, I've got an opportunity. It might not be the full-blown like manager role, but I'm willing to take a chance on you. It's maybe an assistant manager role, something like that. And then that's how you can get yourself back in, right? That's going externally, of course, right? If you're internal, then like if you're going for an internal role, then obviously they would want to see you demonstrate this stuff. Bobby Reynolds says, have you seen workers made changes to become better than they were from the beginning of their work? You mean like have they improved? Yes. Like the beginning they were slacking or taking breaks too long and later they kick butt working. Yes. Butt with 3 T's. They kick butt, right? Yeah, I've seen people turn around, go from like slacking off to kicking a substantial amount of butt. You know? Yeah, it really depends on what the working conditions are. Maybe they get a new boss. I've seen that. Makes a difference. You replace someone that everybody hates and is terrible at their job with someone that's actually good, and you know the team works a lot better for them. I've seen that before. You know, and it's also logical too. Would you like to have a TV show based on the place that you work in the style of Office, Scrubs, or new show, the DMV? I was talking about DMV earlier in my live stream this morning. You see, I'm not in the States, so I've never been to a DMV, but I've seen American movies, and I think they insert a scene with a DMV into like most American movies. It's either a place that replicates hell, or it's a source of complete incompetence, or it's just a place for lost souls. That's the impression I get. So I've never actually had to go to one ever, but that's the impression I get. Would I like to have a TV show? No, I don't want a TV show. It's hard enough doing YouTube videos. No. And nobody's going to give a rat's ass about me. I mean, you need to look at me to see that I've got just that star power that everybody. Could I be married to Heather Locklear on the show? Well, Heather Locklear is like ancient now. You know, I don't know who would be like, you know, the equivalent now. There are no TV stars anymore. I think all the TV stars are like all at least 65 years old. You know. Anyway, whoever is the equivalent of Heather Locklear, I want to be married to them. And yeah, you could like using AI, you could give me a chiseled chin and, you know, perfect body. That's what I'm interested in. Unfortunately, I don't think AI can do anything about my receding hairline, so that's unfortunate. Maybe we will get there in the future. And Gary says, thank you. You're welcome, Gary. That's the end of the questions. Not a single question about my hair. You know, I think I should be, I can't remember if I said this before. I certainly thought this before. I should be happy I'm getting a receding hairline. It's as opposed to the alternative, right? You get an advancing hairline. That's not a good thing. That's even scarier. Yeah, get in the chat. I'm going to be around for I was planning another 12 minutes. So if anybody has questions about what we talked about today, if you have ambitions to move into management, that kind of thing, managing people, you know, in some capacity. Maybe you have the ambition of managing people at a McDonald's or just at a pizza place. You know, that you think to yourself, you know, that's the role for me. I need to deal with teenagers and all their crap, and I'm very, very good at it. And, you know, very rewarding. And there's a lot of money in it. That's what you figure. So, you know, hey, who am I to put a pin into the balloon of your dreams, you know? But no, in any capacity, if you've wondered about this, you know, there's usually like the worker level and then there's the management level. It's like two different approaches to working, basically. And the problem I've observed is that in large organizations like multinational corporations, things like this, unfortunately, you know, the manager tier is essentially like the same mentality as the workers, which is kind of weird and kind of frightening. In smaller companies, it isn't. In smaller companies, the management clearly thinks differently. You take ownership of stuff, right? Your livelihood and your job depend on how well this team does its job, right? Everything is tied to that. So, you think differently about your work. You don't just punch a clock. You care about like what's actually going to be more effective, right? So it's a totally different thing. And then the extreme form of it, of course, is like entrepreneurship, which I talk about every Monday on a live stream called Side Hustle Ideas. That's where, you feel the full brunt of the whole business experience, right? Where if you do your job right, you could, make a fortune. If you do a terrible job or you phone it in, you could essentially end up unemployed. So, you know what I mean? You take your fortune into your own hands. That's the idea. I actually think entrepreneurship is a fantastic thing, for so many different reasons. That's why I talk about it. Number one, it allows you to monetize a hobby or something you enjoy doing. Number two, it allows you to escape from this system of working under somebody's thumb your whole life, doing something that you don't really give a rat's ass about, doing that your whole life. Now, for some people, hey, the world of employment is fine, and that's perfectly fine. But for some other people, it's just not really a fit for them. So it's a great sort of way into that. It can break through any kind of ceiling, you might experience in terms of your compensation. You might not be able to make enough. Like if you don't have any education or you don't have any experience or whatever, that you're worried about, sometimes entrepreneurship can be a way to bust through that ceiling. But it has its own risks and its own frustrations. It requires some knowledge of business. So you can't just start, without knowing anything about business or money or anything. So, but for some people, it's definitely a calling. Anyway, last call. Anybody's got any questions, get in the chat. We're talking about careers. We're talking about people management. What was the exact title of this? It was how to get hired in leadership roles. So that's what we're talking about specifically. In the meantime, check out this course. If you want to learn business and you're looking for, not to spend a lot of money and you're looking for a very flexible solution that'll work for your schedule and your lifestyle, check out this course. There's a link in the description. It's called the $100 MBA. This will teach you everything you can learn in a 2-year brick and mortar MBA program at university. And it can do this because basically it's a reading list and you read all the textbooks, the same textbooks you would be reading in some of the top MBA programs in the world, including things like Harvard Business School and their MBA program. So you're reading the same material. Now, I provide you a lot of videos. I guide you through it, but basically it's something you can do at home. You don't have to take 2 years off your life to go back to school, and go to school full time. And the beauty of it is that if you just want to learn one area of business, say marketing or accounting or something like that, you can do that. You can just focus on that area. You can ignore the other areas. That's fine. If you just want to skim everything, you can do that too. You can skim the books. There's no tests, no assignments, no projects, no evaluations. You can certainly do that stuff if you choose to. There's all kinds of case studies you can do if you choose, but you don't have to. So it's an extremely flexible solution for people that are just wanting to learn, but maybe they want to do the entrepreneurship thing, so they don't need the whole formal kit and caboodle. Or people that are maybe even evaluating whether they should take business at university and they just want to stick their toe in the water and see if they're interested or if they like it. So whatever your motivations, whatever your goals are, this is an extremely flexible solution. It's only $100, a tiny, tiny fraction of what, even one course would cost you in university going and taking a business course. So check it out, link in the description below, and I've done videos that describe these courses, how it works, what you get, that kind of stuff, so it's as transparent as possible. Also linked below. Check it out. Okay, we got a question from Bobby Reynolds. Says, have you compare or fantasy your workplace from TV shows like you as Fred Flintstone or your boss as Mr. Slate? We're getting, like, you're asking the big questions here. Like, holy crap. I mean, this is something I've given considerable thought to. I actually like the Flintstones. I like the idea that, regular life is so much like the Stone Age, and the Jetsons. Who knew that, like, the future, the far future, would be so much like the 50s? They were right. You look at AI today, AI videos on YouTube, and it's all like the 50s, So I guess they were onto something. No, I haven't pictured myself as Fred Flintstone. I'd probably be able to play the part if I could actually act worth a damn, which I can't. But if you have any more gems, be sure to ask them here. Dr. Sid says you're being considered and have been invited for an internal promotion. Bosses, why is that in quotes? An internal promotion? Is that like code for a keg party or something? Or like a wine and cheese party with, shall we say, entertainment? Bosses know you, like you, and have risk assessed you. How can you maximize your ask for more pay for a new role with more responsibility? Well, for a start, you could stop using the letter U to mean YOU. That doesn't go over very well. How can you maximize your ask for more pay when they want to? Well, look, you go through the job interview process. This is some kind of internal promotion in a company, it's going to be a process that resembles, in part at least, getting hired. You're going to go talk to a recruiter. You're going to talk to, the bosses, the manager, and they're presumably going to have other candidates, and they're going to discuss it, and they're going to pick somebody. And if they pick you, only when they pick you and they say, we want you in this role, here's an offer, that's the first time you mention compensation or what you want. Okay? So you don't blurt out like, I need this much, or I'm going to ask for a lot of money. You don't do that before they've made you an offer. You just don't, because it's off-putting. Here's a candidate that wants a lot of money. It's like this. Okay, we're considering three candidates, A, B, and C. Well, A wants a hell of a lot of money. We don't know what B and C want. What would you do? Well, you'd look, okay, is either B or C suitable? Are they, more or less good enough as A? Okay, if they are, we can then dump A, right? A has disqualified themselves, right? We're not going to pay someone the maximum, like the top of the range, if they're not noticeably better than the other alternatives, right? So you wait until they compare A, B, and C, and then they decide they're going with A, and you're A, and then they make you an offer, and they say, we want you. We've thought about it, we've discussed it, we've decided we want you. Here's our offer. Now, if you're in a position where, you don't have to take their offer, you're perfectly fine where you are, or you have other options, lined up, whatever, you can say, well, here's my position. It only makes sense for me to take it if, I get this number. So there you go. There's your answer. So if you can give me that number, great. If not, then I'm very sorry. Regrettably, I can't take it. Right? Now, if you're bluffing, maybe reconsider, because, just asking for more doesn't usually mean you're going to get it. Usually you have to force people's hands. And the way you force people's hands in this situation is by walking away. Because if they make you an offer and you decline it, that causes them pain. And if you're only asking for something reasonable that they can do, then a lot of times they'll say, fine, just pay this person more money and let's get on with this. You know what I mean? If they want it, fine, just give it to them and let's go. Right? That's usually what happens. But you have to be willing to walk away. So don't do this unless you honestly do have compelling options that are better, you know? Right? Like that's a negotiating thing. Anytime you bluff, you need to be prepared for your bluff to be called. That's the first thing they're going to do. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Anyway, there are 19 people here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I'm going to be winding this down. Remember to check out this course if you want to learn business. Also check out this if you want to improve your communication skills. All of these are linked in the description box below. This will give you above average communication skills. So if you're thinking of being a people manager, certainly, then that's something you're going to want. That'll certainly help you. And it's another popular course of mine. This is probably the most self-contained course of the 3 that I have. So check it out. It's linked below in the description box. And once again, I made a video on this course explaining how it works, what you get, and trying to make the whole thing as transparent as possible. So that's also linked below in the description box. So check that out. Alternatively, if you are wanting to get hired, if that's why you're here, just as a general thing, this is my most popular course because that's usually what I end up talking about is how to get hired. So this will teach you how to get hired in the posted job market, and what I consider to be most importantly, how to get hired in the hidden job market. That's really where it's at. So check that out. Also linked below, also with a video explaining it. Very popular course, a lot of bang for the buck. So check those out. I will be back on Monday. I hope, whoops, wrong button. I hope you guys will have a great weekend. And if you do have any questions either about careers or entrepreneurship or about the hiring process, come back on Monday because I'm covering basically all of those across 2 live streams on Monday. So I might see you then. Okay? Take care, everyone. Have yourself a great weekend.